Mute myself.
This meeting is being recorded. This meeting is being recorded by continuing to be in the meeting.
So, Sue, over to you. Warm welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Jacques. That was beautiful and extremely appropriate because I am going to read just about all the poems from my newly published book. Welcome to everybody. It's so lovely to see you all here. And thanks to the Red Wheelbarrow for the opportunity. I'm very excited to be reading from this book. And if you can see it, Between the Apple and the Bite, published by Mojaji. And briefly, the poems are about the choices, predicaments, and celebrations of women through myth and history and into the present. That's the back. And this is a painting by Hazel Woodward, who is here tonight. I don't know where Hazel is, she's disappeared. But it is a painting that there she is. A huge painting that she made. And when I saw it, I knew that it had to be the cover for my collection. The first section is about women in Greek mythology. And for that reason, I'd like to start with a poem by Louise Gluck from her Meadowlands collection. Many of these poems are about Penelope waiting for Odysseus to return home to Ithaca, that Jacques read so beautifully about. And it's about the feelings of her son, Telemachus, towards his absent father and his mother, Penelope. The one I'm going to read is called Telemachus's Dilemma. I can never decide what to write on my parents' tomb. I know what he wants. He wants beloved, which is certainly to the point, particularly if we count all the women. But that leaves my mother out in the cold. She tells me this doesn't matter to her in the least. She prefers to be represented by her own achievement. It seems tactless to remind them that one does not honor the dead by perpetuating their vanities, their projections of themselves. My own taste dictates accuracy without garrulousness. They are my parents. Consequently, I see them together, sometimes inclining to husband and wife, other times to opposing forces. And my collection indeed is about opposing forces. It is about the dynamics between the genders and the inequalities over the millennia. So I will read my poem called Penelope, which is about Penelope after waiting 20 years for Odysseus to return to her on the island of Ithaca. Penelope. From behind the hills, the dawn arrives in a splash of light, setting the drapes on fire, and where they fail to close, a shaft of gold on the opposite wall. I slip from the covers, open the curtains, widen the gap, flood the room with unrestrained sunlight. I look to the line of horizon, the turquoise of the Ionian, the cerulean of the sky, no sail on the unwavering blue. I regard my image in the polished surface of my mirror. What will you see when you return? Features sharper, eyes deeper pools, small creases at the corners, mouth harder from disuse and resolve, hair still lustrous, breasts heavier, more exciting perhaps, an older woman. After 20 years working and reworking this old tapestry, what can I say to match your world beyond this dawn? The next poem I'm going to read is about Helen of Troy, who was the cause of the 10-year war between the Greeks and the Trojans. It is one of my favorites, mainly because of Christopher Marlowe's famous lines in his play Dr. Faustus. Is this the face that launched 1,000 ships and burnt the topless towers of Ilium? Helen. In the evening, The women are permitted to stand on the battlements to watch the culmination of the day's battle. The sun is setting in a stain of red. Our men are marching raggedly through the gates of Troy, Hector in front, then Paris, Glaucus, and the others. The Greeks have retreated to their ships, their wagons loaded with dead bodies and a scrap heap of shields, helmets, and spears. Tomorrow will be the same. There is a cold wind. The king leaves to greet the returning soldiers. A brazier is burning. The guards are at ease. I have an impulse to grab a sword, thrust its metal shaft into the brazier, hold it until it burns crimson, press it to my cheeks, set my hair to burning, blister my brows, sear my lips, cauterize my ears. My face would run like lava, turn 1,000 wooden ships to stone. The next two poems are about sexual assault, an age-old outrage which has led to the Me Too movement in contemporary times. I've brought my poems into a contemporary setting. The first one is Leda. In the myth, the princess Leda was raped by Zeus in the guise of a swan. I've given the story a modern take. Leda is a hopeful starlet being auditioned by a Harvey Weinstein type of character. Leda. Arriving in good time, not believing my luck, if I could get this part, it would be the break of a lifetime. A sidekick leads me over thick grass to a riverbank, an umbrella, a lounger, champagne in an ice bucket, one glass. He fills the glass. I settle on the lounger, sip on popping bubbles in dry heat like the Karoo in a drought, my body under an electric blanket, my cheeks flushed with the champagne. The heat prickles of sweat dotting my neck. I sip, watch the condensation on the bucket drip onto the grass. He fills the glass. I wait, I sip, the air rising in vertical hazy waves. I'm melting into the lounger. The lounger creaks. A heavier weight covers my body. A feather boa around my neck. Feathers brushing my cheek. My ear nibbled. I can't breathe, can't move with the weight. My arms pinioned, a stink of slime and underwater murk. A bass drum beating on my chest, in my chest. A small tapping to get out. My breath shallow, so faint, they stop. Before I die, they kickstart. I'm breathing. The heaviness slides to one side. The weight is gone. The sidekick appears. We'll let you know, and shows me out. And then the other one is Cassandra. Cassandra was the daughter of King Priam of Troy and was given the gift of prophecy by Apollo. But when she rejected his sexual advances, he cursed her by saying that no one would believe her. She predicted the fall of Troy and also warned about bringing the wooden horse into Troy. Cassandra. In the laundry, ironing his shirt, a reverie of crisp mathematics, left side, right side, collar, cuff, puff, puff of a miniature steam train. I am assaulted by a cold front of brute, nuzzling, my neck twisted, bent backwards to face jowls zooming in like a macro lens, ironing board pressing into my spine, wet mulberry lips, hot muscle of tongue, a blind sea creature finding its way. I run from the reek of scorching cotton, an iron-shaped brand on a Versace shirt, a dismissal for lying. I've got a couple of gentler poems. Eurydice. Eurydice was the beloved of Orpheus, who charmed everyone by his beautiful music. She died after stepping on a nest of vipers and went to the underworld. Orpheus was distraught and went to the underworld to ask Hades to release her. Hades said he would, on condition that Orpheus did not look back as he led her out. Eurydice. Your stride's too long, I content myself with 2 steps for one. Keep my eyes on the backs of your legs, your calves tense and relax as you walk. The hours consume miles of dark terrain, your bronzed muscles more intimate to me than my own pallid flesh, which falters from lack of use in my subterranean prison. We make steady progress to a stream. Your sandals cleave the water like boats on an open sea. My feet slip on mossy rocks. I bite my hand for fear of crying out. Wet slippers are no protection against sharp stones. Sand gives way. Scree is treacherous. You leap a small chasm. I hesitate on the edge and watch as the gap between us widens. Your dear frame silhouetted against the dawn. I whisper your name, my voice faint as your fingers brushing a single string of your lyre. You stop, turn. I miss my footing, cry out, slip into the chasm. And then there's Echo. Echo was the nymph who was cursed by the goddess Hera, so she could only repeat the words of others. She fell in love with Narcissus and followed him around waiting for him to speak. Narcissus rejected her and she pined away until all that was left of her was her voice. Narcissus himself was cursed by the goddess Nemesis, who caused him to fall in love with his own reflection. I've also brought this story into a modern setting. Echo. I stand by with your towel as they do at the tennis. You take it roughly, rub your glistening skin and dripping hair. You toss the towel. I stoop to pick it up, hold it to my cheek, breathe deeply of your sweat. At the mirror, you flex your biceps, this way, that way, change your stance, lock your fingers, lats, pecs, traps. I know them all. I stand behind you, a wraith at your shoulder. You notice me. Buff, huh? Buff, I say. And the next section, the middle section, is about women in the Bible. So the first poem I'm going to read is Salome. Salome was the stepdaughter of Herod. Herod promised her a reward for her dancing, and prompted by her mother, Salome asked for the head of John the Baptist. Salome. I'm to choose a reward for my dancing. I think of perfume, gold bangles to my elbow, a mud bath from Jordan, dragon robe of silk, a falcon, a lute, an ivory fan. Mama has a different idea. She whispers in my ear. Her words drop like stones to my belly. She forgets that when a gecko falls, I pick it up, carry its translucent body carefully to the courtyard, watch it climb hand over hand to the safety of the jasmine. Now I'm chosen to bear a heavier weight, a man's head on a silver plate, a reward for my dancing. And then I wrote 4 poems about the Marys in the Bible. The first one I shall read is Mary, the mother of Jesus, and it's called Mary Then. Mary Then. At 14, with limited options, I was betrothed. After the vision, my belly swelled. I expected a beating. The old man said only, we must go from here. The confinement was less than adequate. The packing up, fleeing, hiding, an ordeal. Much later, when I lost my son, I understood my body was a vehicle, my discomforts irrelevant. And then I wrote a poem about Mary Magdalene, which I won't read that one now. But the other one was called The Other Mary. The Other Mary is referenced in the Gospel of Matthew by the following line. And there was Mary Magdalene and the other Mary sitting over against the sepulchre. I always thought she was done a bit of a disservice, although scholars have worked out which Mary was being referred to. these days. The other Mary. I was there that day in the background, as always, reserved, knowing the answer, saying it softly, not heard above the keening of the Marys, not asked for my role in the drama, my carrying of the oils, the sweet-smelling spices, the shoving at the rock, kicking aside the crumpled sheet, blinded by the light, dropping to the dust, weeping for a missing dead man, praying for myself, the other Mary. And now I have women in history. Jeanne, which is about Joan of Arc. She saw visions of angels who told her to raise an army to drive the English out of France, which she did. She was betrayed, tried for heresy, and sentenced to burn at the stake. The findings against her were later declared null and void, and in the 20th century she was canonized a saint. I was fascinated to discover the transcripts of her trial on the internet from the 15th century, and the questions I ask in my poem are the actual questions that she was asked by her inquisitors in the trial. Jeanne. My inquisitors' questions jab like the beaks of crows, prying for an eye socket, piercing a wrist, stabbing at a naked throat. I'm steadfast in my answers. If they would analyze the whole, they would know that truth is unwavering. If I lied, I would forget what I answered previously over the weary days of my trial. Why do you cause yourself to be adored? Are you in God's grace? What do the voices tell you? Why do you wear men's clothes? Why do you dance in the moonlight beneath the ancient oak of Boulemont? I can only answer to you the truth that I know. The rest I deny. The truth that I know is the bedrock after layers of soil are worn away. It is the frost beneath bare feet, stars flung against a velvet sky, blood trickling from slowly opened flesh. It is the fire, the licking tongues of dragons, the open jaws of caves of infernal heat. It is the fire that burns the forest to ash, the flame sucking at my feet. It is death and salvation. It is the fire. Oh, the fire. I fear the fire. I fear it. And then Marie Antoinette, very well known in European history. And I've also put this one into a modern setting. Marie Antoinette. Today, my cappuccino has the image of an ear of wheat nestling on dense foam. My husband has a thin white moustache. He tells me he heard from someone who knows someone in the city that the people are dying. I ask why. He says it is because they have no food. I'm puzzled. If they are dying, why are they walking on the highways, pushing trolleys piled high like migrating beetles? I'm shocked at another instance of fake news. Later, we stand on our balcony in a black southeaster. My hair whips across my eyes. The wind stops my ears. My husband pulls my wrap around my shoulders. The people are dancing in the street, singing, waving sticks. I wonder at the cause of such frivolity on a bitter winter's night. They look up, see us, bend down, pick up bricks and bottles, hurl them, their mouths distorted, eyes finger holes in old grey dough. And then the third one I'm going to do from the women in history is Mata Hari. Mata Hari was an exotic dancer who was widely traveled and spoke several languages. During the First World War, she was arrested as a spy by the English. She was tried by the French and sentenced to die by a firing squad. This was all on very flimsy evidence. Mata Hari. I am ready, unbound, unblinded. 12 boys in khaki and kepis line up. rifles at ease. I am close enough at 15 paces to see the glisten of down on an upper lip, to smell fear in their sweat. I stand tall, framed in my Gainsborough hat, black velvet and ermine, silk ribbons, Louis heels. I played you at your own game. You changed the rules. I, dancer, mother, lover, negotiator, am ready. And then a poem from San folklore. It's called The Girl Who Created the Milky Way. The Girl Who Created the Milky Way. When I become a woman, my mother hides me in a small hut. My brothers track, hunt, eat meat, dance. My food is tubers baking in ash, not to be eaten until the men return. A flame of anger rises to my cheeks. My teeth clash like a trapped jackal's. My nails dig into my flesh. I creep into the night. The stars are distant. The moon a sliver of translucent shell. I bend down, scoop warm wood ash into my hands and roasted roots. I toss them with all my strength, flinging my arms wide across the arc of the sky. The ashes fly high from sunset to sunrise, lighting up the night. The red and white roots stars in the silver stream of spilt milk. I have lit the sky with my fire, made a path for my brothers to find their way home. And then the final section in the book comprises some contemporary poems about women. This one is about women in community with each other. It's called Truth. One afternoon at Grandma's house, I wondered, if truth is a thread in this lace cloth, should I follow the thread and become lost in stitches and loops and patterns? Or should I embrace the whole and stumble under the weight of illusion? Now the cloth is mine, and I love the weight and texture of it on my table, an intricate mandala of matriarchs, girlfriends, daughters, mothers of sons lost to gangs and guns and water and wine, interwoven patterns of truth. And then the first poem that I ever had published is this one, which I've had put into the book. It was published in New Contrast. It was inspired by a print of one of David Hockney's swimming pool paintings. And I've always had it in my bedroom, and I've put it up there behind. I don't know if you can see it. It's actually very faded now. So the colors are not vivid as David Hockney painted them, but he left a very bleak and gray England and went to California, where he was enchanted by the light and the light on shining through water. And he painted lots of pictures of swimming pools and showers and people in showers. So I was inspired by that painting to write this poem called The Swimming Pool. David Hockney, I'm lying at the bottom of your pool, opaque in translucence, curving acutely, a poem out of kilter. I will go soon. There are problems of breathing, and besides, it is your pool. But for now, I shall lie here and think about my part in this as my limbs dissolve. There are no ripples, only patterns of light dispersing and merging. I am one. I am the poet and the poem. I return, water in water, luminous in light. At the door, you indicate that the poem should not leave the premises. I comply and step into the sun. And then a poem which I felt sums up the collection. Although the attitudes in this poem may be from a certain generation, my generation, I think they still hold true for too many daughters. Divine right. At night, images tumble about my head like packs of cards, slipping through my fingers as I grasp for a king, a jack, or even a joker from the hot stream of general anxiety, needing to be in the game, in the thrall of acceptance, sexuality, verbal dexterity, foreplay, the art of lunge and riposte, handicapped by the ancient rule of the father, tangled in a confusion of lessons passed from mother to daughter. The desire to be desired, never to give offense, the divine right of kings. And that is all the poems that I've decided to read from the book, because with COVID, there hasn't really been a proper launch. There will be a launch at McGregor, a small one, brief one. So I just thought I would make a whole a completeness of it and read the poems from the book. I don't know what the time is. It's just after 8. But I think that's about all from me.
Sue, thank you very much for that beautiful reading. Those poems really stay with one, and I could listen, and I'm sure all of us could listen to you read many more poems from the book. I can think of particular favorites. But shall we have some questions and answers, and see maybe that inspires you to read one or two more? Maybe we have a conversation about the poems. How does that sound? Nonwe, do you see any hands in the room? Any questions?
There aren't any hands yet, but I think we can all unmute for a second and just give Sue a big round of applause.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Sue, for gracing us with such beautiful poetry. There is a hand. Ed wants to ask something.
Sue.
Hi, Ed.
Hi. Thank you for the reading. Really powerful and thought-provoking poems. My question is really just to do with the writing process. I wondered about whether it was a challenge or whether it was somehow liberating to give an imagined voice to the various protagonists, to write from those very different perspectives. I mean, it's quite a range of figures that you decided to include in the book.
Yeah, I think once one starts with one woman's story, you actually realize that there's so many women who've had the same experiences and the same stories, right up until women today. So it was, once I decided to write about women, I drew on my own experiences of my friends, and experiences of women that I'd read about in mythology and history. And they all seemed to come together under one kind of umbrella, really, about being constrained by the choices that they can make within their circumstances, basically from within a patriarchal system. So the choices are limited within those parameters. So that it was quite easy. Once one has a framework, it's quite easy to work within that.
Right. Thank you. No, that answers my question. I think they're an incredible feat of the imagination.
Thank you. Thanks, Ed.
Hey.
Thanks.
So Sue, if you look at the chat, there are some comments to you from people who are in the room. So one from Sarah Frost, she says she loves Eurydice. Julie Jana, she says interesting poem about Salome. Christine Coates says a wonderful poem. That was a while back. Julie Jana says she's looking forward to your launch. She's enjoyed the reading. Claire Menicom says, wow, Sue, thanks for reading such deep poems to us. Jennifer Aaron says, wonderful, thank you, Sue. Chris says, thank you, Sue. Carrie, she says, so lovely to hear your voice, reading your work again, Sue. Hazel says, wonderful, thanks. She's looking forward to McGregor. And Annette says, thank you and congratulations.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks to everybody.
Jacques, you can go ahead.
I have a question, but I also cheekily have a request for a poem that you didn't read. You know, but you don't, you know, no pressure, of course. I'm interested in the options that these women have. Some of them seem to me to have more options. Some of them are more empowered. Some of them seem more imaginative than others. Tonight, I was particularly fascinated by the girl who creates the Milky Way. Were you, it seemed to me, you think it would be too much to say that that's a metaphor for how this conversation between, let's say, men and women can be transformed? Because it felt to me as if that what was needed in some of these conversations was light, and she, you know, she creates so much light there out of her rage. I don't know if you want to say anything about it. And then my request, I don't know if you felt like reading Circe at all, because that's
Okay.
I just think it's such a
just on the girl who created the Milky Way, yes, I think it is lovely that she makes the light, but did you notice that at the end, she made the path for her brothers to find their way home? So she is once again making it easier for the men in her life. She's yeah. So maybe the light is kind of tainted a little bit with a bit of dark.
I think it is. I think it is. I think so. I think I agree. But also it does mean that she's done some work, and now, you know, the men have to, I suppose I read it as the men having to do some work as well.
Yes.
But maybe that's too optimistic, too sanguine a reading. You know?
No, well, I'm glad you found some light, because the poems are actually all quite serious and quite dark. And I do write some funny poems as well, which I will read sometime. But this whole book is a fairly serious book. I'll read Circe, because that one is quite a damning poem against men, which is not really how I feel about men. I actually love men. So it's just that I was trying to make a point about the way women are conditioned to put the men in their lives first. But Circe, I will read. She was, I wasn't going to include this one. She was a goddess, and when she defied her father, she was exiled to the island of Aea. And Odysseus, on his travels, stopped by the island with all his men. and she'd been isolated on the island, and she'd learned how to work with herbs and medicines. And when Odysseus landed, his men went on ahead, and they were very rude. And so, although Circe had given them a lot of hospitality, and they were quite brutish, so she turned them all into pigs. It's quite a well-known story. And then when Odysseus came up after them, he couldn't find his men. So this is how the Circe poem goes. Circe. He had followed his men from the beach and now stood before me, late sunlight caressing his flanks, a sea stallion, fine spray of brine on his beard. Nostrils flaring, he asked what I had done to his men, brothers all, their mother's sons, made in the image of their fathers, formed as warriors of winds and wars and whores. I told him I had transformed them. He asked why. I said, because they are pigs. He asked, why are they pigs? I said, because I transformed them. I and their mothers transformed them as they toddled from their cradles, took up sticks, smacked their sisters, spat and cursed at their mothers. I showed him the pens downwind, side by side, a boar in each, hairy hams touching concrete slabs, legs astride a gutter choked with bodily excretions, snouts permanently in the trough. He demanded I return them to themselves, lunged at me. I fell at his feet, hugged his legs, begged him to come to my bed, hold me, give me sons to form and transform. And I think that is kind of the essence of the conflict that women do have, in that they do love men, but the conflict is that we can't do without you. So perhaps leave it at that.
I think it's a wonderful poem, and thank you for reading it. And I mean, what's astonishing to, I mean, I have to say, you know, reading as a man, you know, I think one can try to read as a woman, of course, but what struck me was just how much life there is in the poems, and how they break the silence, and how much life there is in them. I didn't feel despairing. I don't feel despairing, you know, hearing them and reading them. They're wonderful.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Jacques. Thanks.
Hi, can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
Sue, thank you. That was wonderful, and it was very special having heard those poems early on, and the way they've changed, and it's just such this wide canvas. It's beautiful. I just have a request though. You didn't read the title poem, and if there are a couple of poems about Eve, and could you read maybe one of those?
Well, if everybody's happy, I mean, have I not overstayed my welcome?
Okay.
Not at all, not at all. Please do.
There's one long one, which is the title poem, but there's also a shorter one about Eve in the beginning. I'll just say briefly how I came upon the title. It really was a fascination I had at the time with an idea and an action. So the apple is the idea and the bite is the action. And I was fascinated with Eve having that moment of possibility between the idea of taking the bite and actually doing it. And if she hadn't done that, how different Western culture, religion might have been, because Eve did take the blame for original sin, and it arose from that, making that choice to take the bite. The shorter one is in the first one in the book, called Eve. And I put the title poem, Between the Apple and the Bite, right at the end, which is a longer one. So this one is Eve. In our favorite spot, in the embrace of God's tree, the last rays of the sun are blocked by solid granite. The rocks, dark humped monsters, crouch heavy. The wind shivers the poplar leaves, silver maracas harmonizing with distant barks, calling adolescent baboons to bed. We sit lonely and companionable. You are content with mapping the stars as they appear in tiny pricks and patterns, Sirius, Orion, Canopus, the dog. I chat, keep my hands busy, ask questions, what if and why the stars, why the fruit, why the moment of freedom between the apple and the bite? Why am I holy woman when I contemplate the abyss, when I hold forbidden fruit, sink my teeth into waxen skin, bite off a chunk of flesh? That's that one. Okay.
I'm not sleeping.
Feeling hot. What happened?
Nothing's happened. I think it's just some people who are unmuted. Are there any other questions in the room? Any other questions, comments before we take a break and then begin the open mic session? Going once, going twice, going, gone. So I think we're gonna take 5 minutes. So we will be back at 2026. Take a breather to go take something to drink. And then after that, we'll begin the open mic session. Thank you so much, Sue. It's
Okay,
been an
thank you.
experience.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks.